This is ACOFAE. Laura Marie and Jessica Marie proudly present A Court of Fandoms and Exploration, a podcast. Fair warning, everything the hosts say is explicit, full of spoilers and adult content and shall not be used against them. They have opinions. Let's try not to drag anyone for expressing themselves and just have fun for an hour. We all deserve it.
This episode does not contain spoilers, but does mention Wicked Beauty, ACOFAE, the Magicians, the Infernal Devices, and the Mortal Instruments. For full list, please see show notes. There are also discussions surrounding sexual assault, substance abuse, alcoholism, abortion, and death of a parent and grandparent.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to A Court of Fandoms and Exploration, your weekly deep dive into the YA literature and fandoms that we love. I'm Laura Marie.
And I'm Jessica Marie.
And today we are discussing the 1989 novel Weetzie Bat by Francesca Lia Block. And this book is really something. It is all vibes, wouldn't you say?
Oh, totally all vibes. And I think we're probably going to drill the fact that this is from 1989. And so, it was this is a second time read for me. I read it once last year and obviously for the episode. And you've been reading this regularly since you were 13.
Since I was 13. So I think if you know anything about this book is not on Book Talk. This book is not on the radar. There is no merchandise about this book, very little on Etsy. There's just a couple things. If you have read this book and if you know me at all, then you can see where I pulled little pieces of my personality from Weetzie. She is really something. And reading this at such a young age was just I cannot describe it. I cannot describe it. It was like magic, because I immediately then got my hands on as many of her books as I possibly could. And then that just opened a whole world up. And then I found a friend in high school who also really liked her, and that was how we connected. And that was really something. Really something. So yeah,
that must have shaken you, because I feel like nobody really talks about her, even though she has so many. She has over 25 books. She wrote this in college. She went to UC Berkeley. She wrote this in college as she was homesick. She missed her friends. She missed her family. A lot of her work is autobiographical. She said so in interviews, and we'll post a bunch of the interviews and articles that we found in our show notes. But I remember my first time reading this, I was like, I'm picturing you. The style, the vibes. Reading this, I felt like they're so cool. These kids are so cool. It's very quintessential LA when you think of LA in the 80s and 90s, neon and haze. And I think one of the articles even describes it as, very aligned with that whimsical dreamscape vibes that you see in Euphoria. That obviously is at the forefront of a lot of things right now.
There is another novel that Francesca wrote called Pink Smog, which I think really represents that kind of LA feel, because the imagery in this book is something. And I cannot drive home enough. I was 13. So the imagery in this book of flamingo pink sunsets, and the trees and the fairy tale cottages and all of that stuff truly was magic to me. So it is just wonderful. I could just go on and on.
I feel like the way that LA is described in this book, and we're going to get into it more too, of course. LA is a character in this book, the way New York is a character, and a lot in Gossip Girl, or a lot of I can't think of a lot of books outside the top of my head besides Gossip Girl, because that's the first thing I'm thinking about. And I just saw a bunch of Chase Crawford interviews. LA is completely romanticized. And there's a line that I have to look up in the book. But LA is romanticized in the way of it has the good, all the good, all the bad, all the in between. But it's her home. Her as in Francesca, but also the character Weetzie.
The character Weetzie. Okay. Jess, tell me about the characters. You're so good at a character rundown. And there aren't very many.
Yeah, there aren't a lot. You have Weetzie, who is the female MC. She's this bleach blonde, awesome. Like, I say she's an awesome badass, but like, she's badass in her own way. She's very whimsical. She has so much love to give. I think that was like, there are times where I'm reading this girl and I'm thinking, she's a better person than I am. Would have fucking left him. Come back to me. Like, and this isn't, this is a spoiler if you haven't read it. But if you have, great. But like, her boyfriend left her when she was pregnant and then he shows up. Bye. You don't get to skip out on the last 9 months and think everything's okay. Like, sure, be there for the kid if you want, but like, not for me.
And then come back with your own baby. Oh my God. Max, what are you doing?
We'll get into it. We'll spiral because, like we said, the book is vibes. But you have, so Weetzie, you have her best friend, Dirk. You have Dirk's grandma, Fifi. They have a dog, Slinkster dog. Yes. There's Duck, and then there's Secret Agent Loverman. That's his name. There's a whole story. And those are really the pivotal characters. Of course, you have Weetzie's mom, Brandy Lynn, and then you have her dad, Charlie. Then LA, as we said, is its own character. But and it's a short book. It's 84 pages. Yeah, it's 84. It was like, it's 88 pages, but then it's like all the little fillers, but it's 84 pages. But they hit on some like such great topics that for 1989 really shook some of the reviewers that this was out for, recommended for 12 and up, accessible to anybody.
Yeah. Okay. So under 100 pages. And in this book, you have talk about abortion. You have 2 deaths, drug abuse. What else?
Sexual
assault.
Her best friend comes out to her.
Yeah.
And like Weetzie's like, cool, now we can go like boy hunting together. Like she really didn't care
at all.
There's even a lot. She goes like, huh? She was so confused because she was like, huh? Who? What? When? Where? Why? How? Well, not how. But like she was so. But I mean, again, I think it's important to drill that these conversations were happening in 1989. Just as like these conversations are also actually, unfortunately, still happening now because not everybody is like, well, this is part of life. This is part of the world in which we live. And there's too many people who aren't willing to understand that.
And an underlying kind of storyline in Weetzie Bat that you get kind of in the middle towards the end is AIDS. Like it is said without being said. One of Duck's friends dies, and it is like quite clear. They're like, how can we love each other when love can kill us? I mean, that is, we know what that is. Again, all of this in under 100 pages. And within those pages, just Francesca writes in a very specific style, and you really do kind of have to be in a mindset to pay attention to it, because if you are distracted, then you will not get the beauty that she is trying to convey here. And I think that's important, because you can just be like, oh, I can just like knock this out, whatever. And that is true, but you do kind of have to zero in on the vibes, because the vibes are the selling point here, truly. And let's get into the vibes. Weetzie meets Dirk in high school, right? Oh my gosh. And Dirk has a big black mohawk, right? And he's got his 55 red Pontiac and named Jerry Lewis. And he is just as gay as can be. And we love him so much for it. Weetzie, of course, she has, just as you said, the bleach blonde flat top. And she makes her own clothes. And you know how film bros, this is what I was thinking about earlier, you know how film bros like to say that Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is a love letter to LA, right? Like that is what it is. Quentin just did that. Well, that is what I think Weetzie Bat is. And the tour of places that Weetzie goes throughout this book, of course, again, set, out in 1989, just really drives home. These are real places. A lot of them are not there anymore. And Francesca has been interviewed. And Jess, you said people have gone to try to find these places and they're not there anymore. And that's like so upsetting, right? Like,
it's so sad. I mean, especially when you have cities that like make, you know, we joke about, you know, like we're going to do a Shadowhunters. We're going to do like a part 1 and part 2. We're going to do a Shadowhunters, like the Mortal Instruments tour when you come visit me next time. And then we're also going to do a Infernal Devices tour at some point. And I think that's just like part of the love that you have when it comes to media in whatever capacity. Because I remember there was a Gossip Girl, like actual tour and Sex and the City tours that you can go on. And one of the stops for Gossip Girl was Henry Bendel. I'm not saying that right, I know. But the store doesn't exist. The company doesn't exist anymore. So like slowly some of these tours, it just becomes kind of a ghost in a shell. But I feel like the way Francesca writes in this book that even if those places aren't there, you'd still want to stop at that address, because there are articles out there that say like this was the former location. I'd still go to that address to be like, oh, this is so cool. You know how sometimes you have like those Instagram pages where they have like the original photo and then you go to that place and you see what it is now and the comparing and the contrasting of it. I feel like this book is written in such a way that you'd want to do that.
Well, something that I would desperately with my whole heart want to see is Grandma Fifi's cottage. Because this cottage sounds I like paradise, right?
Like the Hollywood, how did they describe it? It was like a Hollywood fairy tale cottage. And if you just type in those words into a Google image, everything that comes up, it's very, it reminds me of everything that we've said on like past episodes when we're talking about different LA Hollywood-based movies, like in The Craft. Just that very Tuscan, old Hollywood style house. And I mean, granted, I guess they do have to be made like that because of all the earthquakes. You want some sort of substantial house, but it is just something so magical about it. You're completely transported.
And the way that Francesca describes the roof, she's like, the roof is like if sand was poured down, and it's 2 bedrooms, which, Jess, you were saying, like, there's a lot of people living in that house at the end with 2 bedrooms, but like one is pink and one is aqua, and they have all of their stuff and it's full of all knickknacks. And Grandma Fifi, love Grandma Fifi, white hair. Sometimes she has it pink, sometimes it's blue. And just the whimsical, like, kind of nature. Grandma Fifi has like all these dresses, and she loves Weetzie. And when you're reading it, and if you're in like the headspace and you're in the vibes, you're just like, I want to be here so badly.
Yeah, I love her. I love Grandma Fifi's house. And even later in the book where they were doing flashbacks with Weetzie's parents, even when they're talking about Brandy Lynn's bungalow in Venice or something, I was just like, there really is something very magical. And I understand that it takes a very specific type of, everybody says like it takes a specific type of person to live in New York. It takes a specific type of, you got to find your vibe. You got to find your vibe. You got to find what works for you. Home is what you make of it, and like where you feel most comfortable. We've had that conversation before, but this book highlights it in a way of like, in a perfect world, you feel like LA could be for you too.
Well, and that is a perfect point. Charlie Bat, right? Charlie Bat is from Brooklyn, and Charlie Bat from Brooklyn moves out to LA, and he hates it, right? He hates everything about it. And of course, Charlie Bat is Weetzie's dad. And then he sees Brandy Lynn on set of the Planet of the Mummy Men. It's just so good. It's just such a great title.
When they talk about like stuff at the studio or like different work, I'm like, this is so LA, and it's not even exaggerated.
It's so funny. But Charlie Bat says like it was love at first sight with Brandy Lynn, and then they go on to describe like kind of their love and the bungalow, and also there's a line that says like, they had a bath in gin, and like that was Charlie's idea. And I cried the day that I met him, a little, I knew already that, oh my gosh, that whole thing. Brandy Lynn is kind of I'm going to say like a tragic figure, but not really. She's just like a sad kind of like mom figure, right? Like she reminds me of the tanning blonde neighbor in Something About Mary.
Okay.
That's
so long since
I know,
that.
right? I hope everyone is Googling that because that's the image. Yes.
See, and it was interesting because I don't know if I've shared this or not. So like my parents divorced when they were younger, but it almost seems like obviously there's lines in the book where Weetzie's like, hey, Dad, why don't you come say hi to Mom real quick? And it was very much I'm going to drop you off at the door. I'm going to wave, make sure you walk in, and I'm going to leave. Like, it was a very messy divorce. It was a very tumultuous relationship where they're still not willing to talk to each other. And it does, impact, the way it's written. I have to make my own assumptions that this was a very messy divorce. And she's still reeling, and it's affecting, obviously, her relationship with her daughter. And her daughter's kind of like, well, I'm going to be a self-sufficient girl. And she does become that because she is having a very active extracurricular lifestyle in high school. Like, holy hell. If only.
Yeah,
what's that
God.
like to have freedom.
The dream, right? How much fun. Gosh.
But that's kind of like how I took it as, and Brandy Lynn does come around and she was like, I wasn't a very good mother. And she was becoming a little bit self-aware. And of course, this was after Charlie's death. And, she was everything that she could be to Weetzie at that time.
And Weetzie did go to visit Charlie Bat in Brooklyn several times, and she said that New York just wasn't for her, though she did say that every time she visited Charlie Bat, it was like the most romantic first date you could possibly think of because he just did everything.
He did everything. And I mean, I am very familiar with that too. It's like, oh, we're going to go to the Met and we're going to go to the Greek mythology exhibit and the French Renaissance paintings and the top of the Empire State Building. And they would go here and there and do all the fun touristy things that you never experience when you typically live there. It's kind of like you have to have a cause. Mm-hmm. And they continue to do that when she brings her daughter there too.
Yeah. Oh, Cherokee. Gosh. If you are a longtime listener of ACOFAE, then you know that Jess and I are very passionate about wishes, and we are very specific about wishes. We have feelings about wishes. Weetzie and the magic lamp and her genie that she has here, I do like that Weetzie was like, world peace. And the guy's like, no. Your leaders are just going to fuck it up immediately. And she's like, okay, infinite wishes. And he's like, no, I can't do it. If I could do it, don't you think you'd hear about it all the time? He's like, no. And I do like that because you and I talk about how specific you need to be with wishes. And I do like that she did try for infinite wishes right away.
Right, yeah, because if you mess up, you could keep going. But not only that, but I remember the first time that I was reading it, I read it and I was like, these aren't specific enough. And I texted you immediately. And then, and we'll get to it. Something happens immediately after she makes the wishes, almost instantaneously, really. I'm like, it's because she wasn't specific. That's the first thought.
Yeah, you have to be painfully specific about wishes. I mean, this is just my personal pet peeve. Come on, think about it, right? Think about your wishes, be specific, think about your loopholes, make it a really long sentence.
And cover, hopefully, in a wishful thinking world, we do like to talk, we do, no pun intended. We do like focusing on fantasy and sci-fi. If there is an opportunity that this does exist out there, I know, Laura, you have yours. You have every crevice lined out. I just have a general. And I need to be more specific. Have it lined up because then you're ready to go. You are ready to go. You have to cover your loopholes and you have to think of your contingencies. Be your own devil's advocate in every opportunity because, even Laura and my conversations, you should see some of our texts where I'm like, oh, da-da-da-da-da. But wait, what about this point of view? And
what about that?
Laura's just waiting for me to finish my rambling to be like, are you done yet? Okay, I see where you're coming from. This is what we're going to do.
Yep. Put it in your notes app so that you always have it no matter what. Whenever the opportunity comes, you're like, oh my God, I got 3 wishes. All right, bam. All right, you're ready. It's important. It's important because what does Weetzie wish for? She wishes for a duck for Dirk, a secret agent lover man for herself, and a house and a happily ever after for all of them. And like, you know, that's not super specific.
But I do love that she used one of her wishes for her best friend.
Yes. The first one.
But yeah. That was like her first thing right off the bat. She wanted somebody for her best friend to love and love, like, very, I mean, granted, it was very loose, so it could have gone either way.
Yeah. Very loose. Very loose. But still, they have such a happy life together. They say that they, you know, like Weetzie was just there and it was the three of them and they did everything together and, you know, they were a couple and Weetzie was just like, you know, but they not once in that relationship, because it wasn't like a polyamorous relationship. They were just like three best friends. Yep.
And she was like, every night before we go to bed, Duck and Dirk would go into Dirk's room and Weetzie would go to hers and they would both give her a kiss on the cheek goodnight. Like, we love you. Everything's like strictly platonic. And it was just like a happy family that they created for themselves.
And that's really important too. Because you're going back and saying like, Weetzie, because of Charlie being in Brooklyn and Brandy Lynn being like really absent and like, you know, an alcoholic and her own like issues. And Weetzie had to be like strong and self-sufficient. And she had a very like active, full like internal life and external life. And this little family that she creates here is just really special, right? And then like we go on in the story and it's just like a very magical exploration of like friendship and like love throughout LA. And we meet Ja Love and Ping Chong and then Raphael. And then of course Weetzie is working at a diner and she meets my secret agent lover man, whose actual name is Max. His name is Max. But we call him my secret agent lover man. That's what everyone calls him. And he has green eyes, he wears a trench coat, and he wears a hat. And he's a filmmaker, and he's very, like, broody, and he follows Weetzie around.
It gives very, like, when they would describe his films, I was always thinking, like, this film noir style.
Oh, definitely. Absolutely, definitely. And the thing with my secret agent lover man, too, is he is very affected by the news, right? He says, like, he gets depressed a lot and the news is just like really wearing him down. And he doesn't think that bringing a baby specifically into the world would be good because of just the way that everything is going. This is in 1989, right? That he just doesn't think that it would be a good place when Weetzie brings up that she wants a baby. And this is where the book gets like the little controversial. Let's just say it. Weetzie says she wants a baby, and my secret agent lover man says like, no. He straight up says the words, no. And Weetzie takes matters into her own hands.
And here's my thing with that. Obviously, we're both very open about our own opinions and our own, not even our opinions, our own choices of that we choose to be child free. That being said, we understand that there are other people who choose to have children, and that is a rightful choice. And we've also been open in our like past episodes and past conversations that, you know what, you can be in a good relationship, and sometimes those choices and those conversations need to be had, because you could be in the best relationship possible, but if somebody doesn't want a kid and somebody really does, that can make or break a long-term relationship. That doesn't negate that the love isn't there. It's just the wants are different, and that's okay too. But in this situation, it wasn't, you know, they could have easily just been like, you know what? I understand. I respect you. I love you. But we clearly want different needs, you know, and different wants out of this. And this is kind of where our journey has to end with each other. But that's not what happened.
No, that is not what happened at fucking all. So what did happen? My secret agent lover man goes on a fishing like retreat with his best friend Coyote, and they are out there for like 3 weeks, right? So in the meantime, Weetzie puts on trashy lingerie, and I wrote down trashy lingerie because that's the brand, and and that brand is what Catherine was wearing in Cruel Intentions in the opening scene. It's her.
Oh my god,
like,
with the bronze?
Yeah,
I had
the
no
bronze.
idea.
Yeah, that's trashy lingerie. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, when they said Fredericks, I was like, okay, I know Fredericks, but I'd never heard of trashy lingerie until I was reading it, and it was obviously it was a proper noun.
Yep.
Oh, that's so exciting.
Yeah, isn't that cool? That was cool. And it's such a beautiful piece on, like, Sarah Michelle Gellar, too, with it. And then she, like,
I still think about that outfit.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. I know, like, all the time. But, yeah, that's trashy lingerie, so that is just, like, a funny little, like, haha nod. So, what do? They bone, right? That is just what happens.
Well, and not just so let's clarify that Dirk and Duck have a threesome while my secret agent lover man is away.
Is gone. Yes.
And they were like, we'll still have a baby together and we'll just do all the things and we're not going to take a DNA test because this is our baby. It doesn't matter. We will love this child. However, the way a child should be loved. We all want a baby together and we're going to raise this baby together.
They did all go to the doctor, which I thought was a nice, interesting detail that didn't have to be in there, but it was. And that's great.
And they were like, they waited for all their results to come back. Everything was great. And then they got drunk and she's like, this is kind of awkward because, her two best friends usually just sleep with each other. And now here's a girl in the mix.
This whole scene where, like, my secret agent lover man comes back and Weetzie tells him, I do appreciate that, though. Like, she does not wait.
Right.
She tells him right away. Like, I'm pregnant. This is what happens. And he loses his shit. Rightfully so. He says, like, this is the worst thing that you could have done.
Yeah, he wasn't mad that she was like, I want a kid still. He was mad of her infidelity.
Yes. Very mad about the infidelity. And then I have a note here. So my secret agent lover man leaves. He leaves for her entire pregnancy, and he does not come back until Cherokee is born, which, like,
and they're
obviously
home. They're like back from the hospital.
Yeah, like it's bad. Just I think that's bad, like shitty, but like whatever. But they do kind of settle into the five of them, right? Yeah, the five of them. They do kind of settle into a routine and a life. Yeah, they have a life, and they start, making movies, and they start, like, doing things together. But there's a note here on page 65. But even in the Rosie house, Weetzie felt bittersweet. Bittersweetness was like a liquor burning in the back of her throat and dripping slowly into her heart. And I think that is, like, so interesting and such a good, like, really pretty little line.
Why do you think it was bittersweet?
Because this quote, this bittersweetness, is when they are adjusting to life before my secret agent lover man came home. They were.
So she was like feeling like, I love this, but I kind of miss him, kind of bittersweetness.
It was, the house felt different, lighter, and more musical because someone was always opening a window, always making sure the light was rosy, everything, but there was something missing. My secret agent lover man wasn't there, and that's this bittersweetness. And it is just, like, a really lovely way to say that, like, even though your life can be perfect, like, there can be a piece missing, and, like, that's okay.
And that kind of reminds me of Wicked Beauty, when you have like Achilles and Patroclus and Helen. They're all kind of like, there are times when someone's not in the picture, and you're just like, and Wicked Beauty by Katie Robert, if y'all are just like picking up, joining us now. And it just, like, everyone's like, yeah, we're happy, we're great, but like something consistently feels like it's missing. And I think it's interesting. And I mean, and this is the good thing about books in general. It kind of opens up your mind to, like, different things you might not have not necessarily considered for yourself, but just to be more aware of, like, other people and, like, how they have how they have their relationships too. Like, but that's a perfect thing to note about, like, the importance of communication and understanding what people's wants and expectations are when you're going through life.
Well, wants and expectations. I had a conversation today at the library about this book, and Jess, I was telling you earlier, but I also had a conversation at the library about a different book, and that different book was talking about POVs.
Oh.
don't worry, I'm getting there. And the POV, it was like, yeah, it was a really great POV. Like, I got to see everything that was going on. Okay. You could argue that, you want My Secret Agent Loverman's POV here because, we are hit with a My Secret Agent Loverman love child situation, with Miss Witch Baby, who shows up on the doorstep of Weetzie's cottage.
Well, not with Witch Baby. Witch Baby is the result of the relationship that Max
had with Vixen. And my absolute goodness, that story, if this were reality and he said that story to me, I would be like, what? What?
Right.
Are you kidding? A coven of Jane Mansfield witches? Okay. Okay.
She basically does, and she's like, let me guess, you saw maggots and they disappeared and you got pregnant. And he's like, yes.
He's like, yes, exactly that. All of that. They were witches. She's like, okay, fine. And then Vixen tries to find Max, and she can't and ends up cursing him, and he does get really sick, and then there's like this whole confrontation, and we have Witch Baby, who they name Lily, but they say that name does not stick.
And her first word was beasts.
Yeah, she was running around just saying beasts.
But Weetzie like looks at Dirk, and she's like, yeah, and he's like, I don't know how that happened. That's totally something he would do.
It really is. I do want to mention, again, this book is set in 1989, came out in 1989. This is an 80s book. Max, My Secret Agent Loverman, does say that he gave money to Vixen to get an abortion. He does say this, and
because Vixen was coming to the door, like, casting voodoo on them, and she said, I need money for the abortion.
Yep.
So he was like, let me talk, because Weetzie's like, I'm not letting you in here. And then once Max, because she had never heard of the name Max in her whole life. Who the hell is Max? Who the hell is this crazy lady? I have a child here. I'm not letting you into my house. Mm-hmm. And so obviously, and he's like, I'll talk to her. I'll talk to you after. And then he like divulges all this information. Honestly, like he was like, because all she's like, if you give me money, I just need money for the abortion. That's why I needed to talk to you. And then 9 months later, ding dong, keeps the money, and then like leaves the baby at the door.
I do like that she included the voodoo dolls. Yeah, it was just like and Duck and Dirk are like, it's a peace offering. She gave them as a peace offering. I was like,
and
okay.
And Cherokee was like really happy with it.
She's like, hey, oh, I love it. I
don't think it was the dolls. I think it was just like their shaved heads.
Yeah. So good. I have a note here that says go to page 82. And I'm going to page 82 just so that we can get a absolute comprehensive list of all of the characters so far. So far, because this is like towards the tail end of the book. So by this point, we have Weetzie and My Secret Agent Loverman, Dirk and Duck, Cherokee and Witch Baby with Slinkster Dog and Go-Go Girl, and the puppies Pee Wee Wee Wee, Teeny Wee Tiki T, and TP. I just love reading that. And of course, Charlie and Brandy Lynn. I just love reading that. So that's a very full house now. Now we're full of 6 people with the dogs. Really, really love it.
And it's because they love the house. It's not because they don't, they can't afford, like they've all had their big break in Hollywood at this point. It's like one of those cliche Hollywood stories. Everybody knew everybody. They were roommates. Where the diner that Weetzie used to work at, she found like these two paying customers that just became regulars, and one worked on set design, like creative, and one worked in wardrobe. And so they were like the people on the set of Secret Agent lover boy man. Sorry, no. On his film, and then Weetzie starred in his film, and everybody was just like, it was just like one of those quintessential, like only in Hollywood does this stuff actually happen, because you hear about the stories all the time. And they were like, we could eat sushi anytime we want, which I was like, oh, that's the life. I just had three rolls for $15 today. So I was like really excited for this. I was like, sushi, whatever you want. That's a dream. So they just, it was their happy house full of their happily ever afters that Weetzie had wished for. That was just so full of love.
So full of love. And it's like warm and cozy. And it is like, I think about this through like rose-colored glasses. Like everything is like tinted like rose-colored glasses. It is just so lovely. And then, of course, we have all of this loveliness, and Charlie dies. And of course, that is very, very sad. Obviously, it's very sad. But Weetzie has a really beautiful line about grief and how it was just like really different for her, and it would just like well up, and that's really lovely. But again, less than 100 pages. So much has already happened, right? Like, so much has already happened. 2 kids, a threesome,
abortion,
2 deaths. Yeah, 2 deaths.
Substance abuse, sexual assault. I mean,
so much has already happened, but it is not a heaviness that like pulls you down either. Like you are like floating through all of this. It is not like a bad thing. But then towards the very, very end of this, Duck finds out that his really good friend has died, and he leaves this letter to his family, because all of them are his family at this point. I'm just gonna read this because I think it's really important. Again, 1989. Dear Weetzie, my secret agent lover man, Cherokee witch baby, and my dearest and most darling Dirk. I found out yesterday that my friend Bam Bam is sick. He is really sick. The world is too scary right now. Even though we're okay, how can anyone love anyone when you can kill them just by loving them? I love you all too much. I'm going away for a while. I will never forget you. And Dirk, I will always love you more than anyone. Duck. And I just think that is so real, right? Like, how can anyone love anyone when love can kill you? Especially like for them in this community at this time, like this fear, this like underlying current of fear that is there is just really important. Again, a theme in a book that is under 100 pages. It touches so much, and in such a really lovely way, because then the last like 13 pages of this, or 10 pages of this book, is Dirk kind of going on this search for Duck, right? And he's going to all of these bars, and he's trying to like find him.
He drives up to San Francisco. Like he's just like on a, I like, this is the love of my life. It's such a different way from when my secret agent lover man left to how Dirk was like, and they even said like they've only seen, Duck. They've only seen Duck cry twice. Once when Charlie died, and then the second time was here before he left. Just trying to like get his head on straight. Really, I feel like he just needed to be, not because he didn't love them. It wasn't like a way of leaving the family. He was just like, I need to wrap my head around some things. Like, this is a lot right now. And with a house full of 6 people, and it's only 2, like, who could blame them?
I get it.
And like 15 billion dogs, because they do have multiple dogs at this point.
Yeah.
Because Weetzie had said, I want a baby. And Secret Agent Loverman said, like, I brought our Slingster dog, like another dog, so they can have puppies. And then when you want more babies, like, they have more puppies. And, you know, like, who doesn't love fur babies? But she's like, that's great, but I actually want like an actual baby, not like a fur baby isn't just going to do it for me.
Yep. Oh gosh, men, right? men. So the last like tail end of the book, I have a note here. Anderson's pea soup. It's all you can eat. I would fucking love to eat all you can eat pea soup. I love pea soup specifically.
I do love a pea soup.
And I think that would just be so good. So I would really love that. I wrote a note just being like, damn, that would be really good. The last couple pages of the book are just about like appreciating their life, and like they finished a movie and they dedicated a movie to Charlie Bat, and then they're like working on a new one, and it's just like Weetzie's heart is so full of love. And then, of course, the last sentence, or like last, I guess, like 2 kind of sentences technically in this book, are just so good. It's like Weetzie is talking about her family and her life, and she's like, I don't know about happily ever after, but I know about happily. And I think that is really nice because 89, this story was not done, obviously. This is the first in the series of the Dangerous Angels. Love is a Dangerous Angel. It's like they said the thing, because we know that the series is called Dangerous Angels, but in 1989 when this came out, that was just a line in the book.
Well, in Dangerous Angels, and it's like even like I think a chapter in the book too, it encompasses all of the following mini stories after it, and it's in one compilation known as Dangerous Angels, which has all the books within it. Because like we said, this is only 100 pages, less than.
Yes.
So it's multiple books that are that size encompassed in one book.
Yep. So there's like Weetzie Bat and Cherokee and I think Goat Guys and Witch Baby and a couple other ones. Yeah.
I need to know the chaos that, like, I have the book. But I haven't continued with the series yet. And I'm glad that I haven't, so I could just stay focused on this. Mm-hmm. But that was one of the first things that I said when I had read it last year. I was like, oh my gosh, like, I would have never guessed I shouldn't have said never guessed, because I had never read this either. But the subject matter that is being discussed in this book, in a YA book no less, in 1989, like, I feel was unheard of. Like, this feels like very one of those could have been, maybe tried to have been a banned book if you knew what the subject matter was in. Because if you look at the book, you're like, oh my gosh, that's like, it's pink, it's pastels, greens, it's about LA, like, go for it, especially if you're a parent who's not censoring books at all, you're just like, okay, whatever. So yeah, like, why would it have been on anybody's radar?
Well, it was on somebody's, because on June 25th in 1989. Yes, June 25th, 1989, there was a letter to the editor complaining about a review about Weetzie Bat. So I guess Betsy Hearn reviewed Weetzie Bat and said that it was like really lovely and it was a punk adult fairy tale. And, is an ingeniously lyrical narrative. And then in this letter to the editor, just like tears it apart and says like, no, Dirk is a homosexual and they look for lovers together. And then it just goes on to say like, all four of them live together in a house. And she climbed into bed between Dirk and Duck. Where is the responsible parenthood and responsible sex in this book? It's just bad. And then she goes, is Weetzie Bat a good role model? Scarcely, since in many respects, friendship and sexuality are quite distorted. It's like, this book is not a lyrical fantasy, but a glorification of pathological neurotics. Woo.
All you could do is laugh at, like, the anger. I just feel like the mobs, I can't even say the mobs of yore, the mobs of now.
There are far better choices available for impressionable readers than this superficial novel. This is like from this lady, Barbara in Ithaca, New York from 1989. But damn, so like there was a little bit of like, whoa on this, even though critics did really love this. But I do want to talk about how this has been promised to readers in the form of movies and TV shows for years, and it has never, ever panned out, but our fingers are crossed, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, there's a Deadline article from 2018 that it was basically saying, like, Anya Taylor-Joy is going to be Weetzie. It was basically, the cast was all lined out. This is going to be a fully screenplay was adopted. Francesca wrote the screenplay herself. It was going to be produced on A24, and y'all, like, A24, does not fuck around. But it was also part of, like, the Fox Searchlight. So, I mean, it's been a long time. And I have to assume, and Laura, you and I were discussing this before we started recording, that might have been just like one of the projects that fizzled out during the acquisition when Disney bought Fox, so it is what it is. However, it was announced and confirmed this year, and there's a Variety article on it also, that Peacock, the streaming service, which is owned by Universal, they're picking up this with Sarah Gamble as like that, basically the head showrunner who is going to be writing. So it's not Francesca, but they're working closely together and going to be executive producing. They have a whole different executive producer. Nobody really knows about the casting yet. And then like, I'm hopeful. I think we're both hopeful because even now, Francesca Leah Block has a book coming out called House of Hearts, and she has a like Q&A with Sarah Gamble in LA. Actually, by the time this airs, it would have passed. It would be over the weekend. So that's really exciting to see just like how these relationships are continuing, because that article came out in February and here we are in July. So like, there has to be some movement if that relationship is continuing. Or you'd like to assume.
We'd like to assume, yeah. And of course, like, we trust Sarah from Supernatural and from You and The Magicians. Yeah, and The Magicians. We absolutely love and respect Sarah. She does great work. Wild Fox did like a sponsored spread and did like a Weetzie themed.
You showed me this a while ago. I completely forgot about that.
Yeah,
but those are the vibes.
Those are the vibes. Yeah, so if you Google like Wild Fox Weetzie Bat, it'll pop up, and they are beautiful photos.
And Wild Fox, for anybody who's not listening, is a designer. So, yeah, it's like a company. So
yeah, and one of the designers split off from them and went and formed Selkie, which is the dress that I wore to Denver Comic-Con. Or Denver Fan Expo.
Oh, I forgot. You did say all these things. I completely completely forgot. I was like, oh my God, that's right.
Everything is connected. But there is more connection here. There's more connection here. So, okay. If you look at the cover, Jess, you mentioned the cover of Weetzie Bat. We both have the same version. It is very like pink and sparkly, right? And the back also very lovely.
It's very ethereal.
Very ethereal. And then we noticed some differences in our books. Mostly mine has like a little attached like dust jacket thing. But there's a picture here.
She's giving me La Habra.
It's giving La Habra, right? It's a beautiful photo. They're very ethereal. These photos are shot by Susa Scalora, who has fantastic, three really fantastic photography books. One about angels, one about fairies, and one about that now I can't think of off the top of my head.
Is it witches?
Is it witches? It is witches and wizards. Yes, very good. It is witches and wizards of, I think, Oberon. Yes. So those vibes are absolutely gorgeous. Susa shot a lot of the covers that are used for a lot of Francesca's books. You can look. They all have the same kind of like really glittery, fuzzy, saturated, gorgeous colors, and just something that you would not really expect. And it is very same vibes to me as Alexa's book, don't you think?
Oh, Alexa Demi, yeah. Well, she has like that. It's like a co-book with the photographer Petra Collins, who they basically, I think it was one of those crazy one of those collaborations that they just really both admired each other's work. That a friendship came from it, and then they would just shoot, and then they were like, oh my gosh, like we don't want to get rid of any of these, and they made a book like I don't want to say a coffee table book, because it's not just photos, it's stories of myths under the same realm of the fairy tale. I mean, the book is called Fairy Tales, so it's like, and it's almost like a fairy tale erotica with the shoots. So there's like different types of like bondage play, and I mean, it's all so beautiful and so all you just stare and you're like, this is art, and some images, and there's a wonderful, I think it was Vogue or Vanity Fair article that was a joint interview with them together, where they were like, you know what, some of the images might make you uncomfortable, but does it make you think? And that's always like, I mean, that's what art is supposed to do. It's to provoke you, and that's what it does. And you just want to. I have to open mine just to read it, because I want to read the stories too. I know we had just collectively gone through the books, because Laura, you have the book too.
Yeah, and it is absolutely gorgeous. The vibes here, though. So when you're looking at like Sousa's work and you're looking at like the covers and you're looking at Francesca's words, you really get a good vibe. And then you pivot to fairy tales and you're looking at that and you're like, damn. But then it's like, okay. This hasn't been casted yet. So like, we can't be the only ones making these beautiful connections.
No. I mean, like, because like I said, I haven't read the rest of the Dangerous Angels, yet. But I can just imagine with the description of Witch Baby, I just imagine like Alexa could be a really good witch baby.
She really could.
And like with the way the series is now, because it has been confirmed currently, it was a screenplay before and it's now a series. I mean, like we said, this book is under 100 pages. So do you really make Weetzie Bat a season, or like how do you integrate it? Or is like, or could each of the books within Dangerous Angels, is it like a mini series that are under an hour and these stories? I mean, or do you, or because they're so thin, does that give you room to breathe and make things more whimsical and magical? And there's so much content and like meat to these short tellings and stories that I feel like you can't. I mean, you can, but you can't go wrong with Sarah and Francesca at the helm, or you would hope not.
You would hope not, especially because like the Magicians it's like a trilogy, right? It is like a story. But then the series was, like 4 or 5 seasons, and they were able to really pull it out and to make it a really richer experience than the books.
Dare I say, it feels like something that the screen adaptation is better than the books.
Right? Yeah, it's good. It's good. So, all trust and faith in Sarah. Francesca, obviously, like her worlds have been affecting me for a very long time. And then just these like immediate thought comparisons that we have, like, between the lyrical style and the like photography and just like the general like euphoria vibes that this kind of LA setting gives us. It's just it could all work. It could be like a very beautiful project. That is just us like manifesting, throwing that out there into the world, because like I really just want to see something positive come out of this. I've been a fan for so long. And I've been disappointed. And
it's the tease, right? Because if there are books that we love that will never be made into, which is fine,
it's fine.
Like they will never be made into screen or TV or any type of like film adaptation, media adaptation, I guess I should say. And that's fine, because there are certain things that you'll never want ruined. I do feel like you're like, we could have just not touched it, and it would be fine. And I feel like there's probably Francesca and Laura, you are the expert here. Like, correct me if I'm wrong. That would be fine if that was the case. You're like, what? This is fine. Like, it doesn't need to be turned into anything. But now that the tease has been there time and time again, you're just like, but I want it. And I'm sure people feel that way with like Throne of Glass after like the confirmation with ACOFAE. And obviously we know that there was a Throne of Glass pilot. You're like, ugh, but what if? And I love Throne of Glass. I have a tattoo, don't get me wrong, but I don't want something if it's going to get fucked up. So that's kind of how I feel. I'm like, you know what? Better untouched. Don't want to talk about it, and I feel that way about a lot of projects. So
but let's see. Fingers crossed on this one. Really stoked. Jess, what was your like? I know you read this twice. So like the first time was vibes. Second time was like, picking up on stuff. But you like this? I know that this was something totally different for you.
Yeah, I really, it's different in the sense that I love that I got to read it as an adult. I think I would have liked it as if I was younger when I read this. I mean, when I was 13, I was reading like the Gossip Girl series in our school library too. But I don't know if I would have had the takeaways that I do now. I mean, I grew up in a small conservative town where I feel that if this book was available, it would have been like the way the critics were talking about. And probably, I mean, look about it. Like, look at fucking Virginia. They're trying to censor fucking ACOFAE. So if ACOFAE is being censored, like, this sure as hell would have too, with just the subject matter alone. And I think it's so important. And Laura, you've shared on the podcast before, like, you went to a Catholic school basically your whole life. So like, there probably would have been uproar there too.
Well, and you bring up a good point, and it's something that we do need to address. Weetzie Bat has a daughter named Cherokee, and Weetzie Bat does have, we're going to say it's an appreciation for the Indian, Native American, like, culture and heritage. She does say on page that she's in feathered headdresses, and she's in like fringe and moccasins and all of that stuff. Again, 89. This is 1989, and Francesca has come out and said stuff about it. Yeah.
Yeah, and we have the links, again, do your research. We'll put additional links in the show notes. But I mean, and even like the referencing of like, indigenous cultures and communities was like, reading it, you're like, ooh, this is not, this did not age well. But then like doing some research for this episode too, you're like, oh, and it was brought to her attention. She has apologized. She has learned. She's worked within the community. She's had like conversations. It wasn't just kind of like a blanketed, but it was definitely, you could tell that it was written in a way that it wasn't supposed to be appropriation, because Weetzie on paper was like, fuck us white people.
Yeah,
we turn everything to shit, and she was like, she says it and she acknowledges it. And even the genie acknowledges, like, no, fuck y'all. Like, all world leaders somebody's gonna fuck it up, So it really was made as an appreciation, although it's not reflected. And again, like, the author has learned and has acknowledged and has discussed, has had discussions about it. So it's not, we're not saying that it doesn't come with some issues. But like, again, it's 1989. And even to address this later, a lot of people are being a little reflective, which is the same thing as what we do with the podcast here, where you're like, things that you loved growing up, you're like, ooh, this is a bit problematic. How did we get it? How did we think this was ever okay too?
Yeah, and it is just an interesting conversation between like appropriation and like appreciation,
right?
And like the slippery slope and everything. But this is like a very clear appreciation situation, and I do appreciate that Francesca did come out and like address it. I am glad that it was brought to her attention. I'm glad that everybody is like aware.
Well, yeah, and that she wasn't dismissive about it either.
Exactly.
And like, not only was she not dismissive, but like, she took accountability, and I think that's a big thing, and has actively altered, that it wasn't just a blanketed an apology and then continue to do whatever the fuck she wanted to do. Like, that was not the case, and so often that is the case.
Yeah, and it's gross. That's so gross when that's the case. Like, but that's not the case here, and we love this. We love this book. Very, very excellent. Probably available in a lot of places, right?
Yeah, I read mine because I typically like doing the ebook copies when we're doing like a lot of stuff with the podcast, because I like my little notes. But I read this on the ebook through the library. And then I also have the paper copy, but I didn't want to make my notes in my paper copy because it's like a first edition.
Which, if you're interested, there are a lot of first editions floating around.
Oh yeah, and like not for pennies.
Yeah, they're not. It's not expensive. No worries there. Like, no worries. Really good. Would recommend this book. Really fantastic. And there are other books in this series. So like, maybe we continue on with that. We will see.
So thanks for listening. You know where to follow us. ACOFAE Podcast on Instagram. We're also both on TikTok, ACOFAE Laura and ACOFAE Jessica. As always, thanks for listening. And if you ever want to leave a 5-star review, we'd appreciate that too. Thanks so much.
Thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye.